What's up, Dolphins? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Gries. And oh, baby, it's Combine Week. Where's that steal? Which player are the Miami Dolphins, or players? Which players are the Miami Dolphins going to find this week to help reshape the future? Our own Kyle Krabs is in Indy on Combine Week.
Hey, Jeff Zgonina. Happy Monday. Olympic gold yesterday.
Kyle Krabs, host Locked on Dolphins. Congrats to Team USA, and here's to a very chaotic and busy week at the NFL Combine.
Fins up. It's the Dolphin Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphin Squad Show starts now.
Yes, it does. Brought to you by FanDuel, our proud sponsor today. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Look at us. We're making it happen from all corners of the globe. Z's a little dark. I got little weird backgrounds behind me. Kyle's in Indy for the Combine. This is what we do, fellas. We make it happen. Regardless of what's going on, we make it happen. And here we are with your squad show. And look at Kyle Krabs out there in Indy. He's got the game face on, and you know that it's a big week for Kyle Krabs. What's up, Kyle?
Yeah, it's a kind of a chaotic week for everybody. The whole league descends into Indy with the exception of a few teams that kind of have the big wigs that stay back home. And a lot of business gets done this week. You know, you kind of already saw some of that with some of the franchise tag stuff that came out earlier in the day today with the Falcons reportedly intent on using the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts. And you're starting to see some contract extensions announced for guys to come back to the same team. And then on the other hand, you get some guys that are announcing retirements like Bradley Bozeman this afternoon. So everybody's kind of understands we're all here in this place. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. And I would expect it is going to be a chaotic week because it always is.
Yeah, and Z, I want to start with you, man. This is something that is unfortunate whenever we get any news like this. But like yourself, a Purdue Boilermaker, the biggest story in the league today is Rondale Moore, 25 years old, and he obviously passed away over the weekend. Purdue Boilermaker, a big-time playmaker, you know, in the NFL, and just a sad situation. Injuries in his career and just an electric playmaker. But I know you're a big part of that Purdue Boilermaker family, Z, and that one hits home.
Yeah, it's a big loss for, us Purdue Boilermakers. You hate to see, one of your brothers go down, with some issues like that has happened. Our prayers go out to, his family and all his loved ones, and we just try to, help each other out. The big thing's always been, preached about, especially in the NFL, amongst each other in the locker room. Like, if you need to talk to somebody, call somebody, and you just hope that, people can learn from this, and will reach out, if they need some help.
Yeah, and that's something that really stands out to me about that is, when you need help, things are bothering you, life gets crazy, just reach out, talk to people, do whatever you can. And on the flip side, Z, like you said, be there. Because you never know. I mean, that guy next to you, whether he has his hand in the dirt lined up next to Jeff Zgonina or across the way or whatever, that's a human being. And, the issues that all of us face. See, and I say this all the time, right? When people talk about, NFL players who get arrested or who get charged with a crime or, real life things, and all these things happen like with Rondale. And, to me, NFL players are no different than the rest of society, right? You have good guys, you have bad guys, you have regular guys, you have everything in between. And just because you put that helmet on and make all that money every week doesn't make you any different than anybody else out there.
No, we're just like the guy next door. I mean, we're normal people. Yes, we do something extraordinary on Sundays, but we still are just normal people. We still have the same issues as everybody else in this world.
Crazy. All right, here we go. We'll move on with that now on your Dolphin Squad Show. And Jeff Zgonina, call him Z. Kyle Krabs is at the Combine in Indy. And, Kyle, it's always so exciting the week of the Combine, right? I always find it to be fascinating, right? The two big trips in the offseason are Mobile and Indy. I mean, like as big as the NFL is, we got to find better destinations than Mobile, Alabama and Indianapolis, Indiana. But that, Kyle, that almost adds to the folklore, right? It almost adds to it that it's Indianapolis, that it's, it's been there for so long. The combine is such a staple. So many things happen every year. Players come out of nowhere, but it is fascinating, man, that you guys are sitting there in the cold in Indy when it could be somewhere in Florida.
Well, I think part of the appeal is that it's central to the country, right? And it's, your Seattle and Miami and New England and San Francisco, that travel's not dramatically skewed and everybody can kind of meet in the middle. And yeah, I think there's some charm to a place like this. Now, there's some years where it's bitter cold, and it was pretty cold yesterday, but it wasn't. There's been some years where, you hate to go outside and walk to the convention center, but they've got a pretty good setup with the convention center here. And then obviously the medical facilities where they do all the physicals and the scans and then the interviews. And I will give the city of Indianapolis credit for they have these sky bridges. So you don't really have to go outside. You can walk on the overpasses for people. It's like those old wildlife overpasses or underpasses they make in like the rural areas now, so that they've got a place to cross the highways. They've got that for the cold with people here in Indy. So I've been getting some good legwork in with the sky bridges already and trying my best to stay indoors.
There you go. And he was in the gym getting a workout in, guys and girls, just so you know the dedication of Kyle Krabs. And I know you're going into this, Kyle, with expectations. How many combines is this for you, by the way, on site?
This has been every year since 2019, I think. I've been in Indy every year.
There you go. So Kyle's there every year, and every year you go in with some sort of an expectation, right? And the Dolphins, Kyle, are in complete rebuilding mode, right? So this year, more than almost any other year, you're literally on the edge of your seat, and you're expecting to see some great athletes out there who the Dolphins might be able to take. And every team in the league is looking for that steal, right? Every team in the league is looking for that player that nobody else knows about yet. And you always get 2 or 3, maybe more players who come out of nowhere and end up shooting. Mike Mamula, for example, one year was a guy just shot right up the draft board as a result of the combine. But it's kind of interesting. And then I want to get Z's take on this too as a player and a coach. But Kyle, the combine used to carry, and it still does, but maybe not as much as it used to, right? You're not drafting just what happens at the combine, but how has it changed over the years in your mind, since the years you've been going, and over the years when you're going into the combine and you're looking for that one thing that could make the difference and put your team over the hump as you're getting in there?
Yeah, I think you've kind of seen a change in philosophy for a lot of the players with the workouts and the on-field stuff, and there's a little bit less of that, and you see more selective testing, and guys don't do everything anymore. And a lot of times guys just opt to come in and do the interviews and the medical exam, and they'll skip the on-field stuff altogether. And quarterbacks, like, it's a big deal that Ty Simpson's throwing, because most first and second round quarterbacks don't come into Indy and throw because they want to go to their pro day and throw to their wide receivers they played with for a few years and make sure the ball doesn't hit the ground instead of throwing to a bunch of guys that never thrown to before. So I think the value, it's always been about like confirming guys have baseline levels of whatever your concerns are for their physical profiles. And the interviews are obviously such a big piece of that puzzle. But it does feel like, even as the league has tried their best to kind of sensationalize the on-field testing by moving it to get it in a prime TV block to have as much viewership as they can, and trying to make it a destination thing and letting fans into the stadium for the testing. Like, they've really tried to kind of drum up the interest, but it really does feel like, I don't want to say the on-field stuff is an afterthought, but it probably carries the least amount of weight now versus the medicals and the business side of the combine for teams and agents and teams amongst each other, and then the interviews that the prospects have with the teams too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Z, from a player standpoint, right, and from a coach's standpoint, I want to get your thoughts from a coach's standpoint too. But first, from a player standpoint, Z, what was the combine like? Did you go to the combine? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was not like this. I mean, literally, we were at the hotel. You sat in your room, and you got a phone call if you had to come down to talk to somebody, and that's all it was. I mean, literally, we were in a ballroom for the bench test and the height and weight, and it was, we're all lined up against the partition wall, you just went in order. Everybody did it. nobody opted out back then. You did everything that you were asked of. You ran your 40, you did your broad jump, your high jump, your height, weight, your bench, and you did all your interviews, and that was it. Like now it's, guys just do the interviews, and that's, and they're medical, and that's about it.
Yeah, Mendoza's not going to throw. When you think about it, Z2, and so how does that change your approach then, Z, as a coach, right? You're heading into the combine, and let's say the Miami Dolphins, you're sitting there at number 11, and Ty Simpson's going to throw, and some people out there think that the Dolphins should take a flyer on him, but then you're looking at the guys who are running and benching, and to me, Z, it's almost become, the combine has almost become for guys who need to move up the draft board. It's become like it's an event for those guys now, because if the players who are already at the top of the draft boards aren't doing anything, and they don't want to hurt their stock by working out at the combine because they've already shown their body of work. Is that true? Do you think it's just become an event for guys who are looking to move on up the draft board and maybe raise some eyebrows they hadn't raised before?
I mean, every once in a while you get some of the top guys, compete, especially like in the D line room. There's only a few every once in a while that won't do everything. I know that one year one guy ran the 40 and that was it. And one guy didn't do anything. And then you go to their pro days and he still just ran a 40. This one, he went first overall. And then, I drafted a guy that didn't do anything. No workouts at the combine and no workouts at his school, but he was at the combine. He went through the interviews, and that's all you get. That's all you get. But majority of the time, a lot of those guys, top guys, your tape talks, right? So in certain positions, you just got to watch the tape, because a guy could be a phenom at these events, run a great shuttle, a 3-cone and all that, and run a huge 40, but can he play football? At the end of the day, can he play football? Put the tape on it and let's watch it, and that's what I believe. I'd rather go off the tape than numbers. Some people like to be number people. Some people like to be tape people. I was a tape person.
What are your thoughts on all that, Kyle?
Yeah, I think tape kind of puts you in a certain stratosphere and bucket as a player. And then when you're trying to figure out the tier within that tier and kind of the hierarchy of guys that you kind of value the same, obviously after you go through your vetting process, and a lot of the draft process is trying to find reasons to disqualify guys, right? Like what do we need to be worried about for why you would not be a fit? And trying to uncover what those things are. And if you pass all those things and the tape puts bucket, the testing, as long as it's backed by what you see on the field, it can be a tiebreaker. It can help you with some of those tough decisions as far as what you think a guy's ceiling and a floor is. But I'm with Z. At the end of the day, your body of work is what you do on the football field. And this athletic testing portion of it is helpful to kind of see, okay, what might you look like in a different environment than the kind of offense that you played in, or the kind of defense that, or the role that you played within your defense, are you physically capable of doing something more or being something more? And there's an art to not overcorrecting with that new information. But I do ultimately think kind of your stratosphere as a player is defined by the play on the field.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm with both you guys on that. But Kyle, so that being said, you're in Indy. Obviously, you're a big draft guy. What are you looking for, man? I know you're not the GM of the Dolphins, but you're out there and you're thinking, you're doing content. You're like, man, I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that. And I'm hoping they see this too. So what are you looking for out there, Kyle, from a Dolphins standpoint?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the pass rush group shakes out. It's a really compelling class in that regard. And the Dolphins obviously have a massive need there. I'm interested to see how some of the offensive line guys shake themselves out. This interior offensive line group seems to have some really compelling kind of day two guys, and looking for guys, your offensive linemen. I like to look at the 10-yard split and the jumps, the vertical jump and the broad jump. You're kind of looking for that lower body power for the heavyweight guys and how much force they can generate in a short amount of time. So I'll be keeping my eyes on guys that test well there and looking to see if that aligns with what I saw when I watched them on the field. And then I think some day three skill players, right? I think if the Dolphins are going to talk about building this thing from the inside out, that they're going to talk about loading up the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. I think the swings of the bat that you're going to get a little bit later in the draft, it's not unheard of to find a productive tight end in the middle rounds. And wide receivers are obviously deep every single year because of 7-on-7 culture and how much these guys get a chance to play. So that's kind of my school of thought coming in, without marrying to a single philosophy that the Dolphins, I think, that there's a bunch of different ways they can go about this year and it can still be successful and productive. But that's where my frame of mind is at looking at these guys coming in.
Real quick, Z, before we hit the break, what's your frame of mind as you're heading in? Let's say you're in that coach's room. What are you looking for?
I like the interviews, because you sit there and you get to really get to know these guys. You kind of try to throw them off their game a little bit because they're all prepped. Their agents got these guys prepped. They've watched. They know what to say. They have all the right answers. So I always try to trick them a little bit and try to get them, to change up their story a little bit, and just to see how they fit. Can they handle, being criticized? Can they handle being praised? And what the response is. So, it's nothing harsh or anything, not how it used to be where guys would go after guys, but, I like to ruffle little feathers here and there and go from there.
See, what's it like in those interviews before we go to break? I have to know, man, like when you're scouting a prospect and you're out there in Indy and you're doing the interviews, is it the head coach, the coordinator, and like the position coach? Some guys, is it just the D-line coach? Like, what's that look like?
Well, there's two types of meetings, formals and informals. So the informal, now they have it at the stadium. They used to have it at the train station, the old train station across from the Crown Plaza, which you just sat at a big table, and each team had their table, and, you'd have a runner, a scout bringing players over to you, and you just interview them for 10-15 minutes. And then the formals, you're up in now, 'cause now the informals are in the stadium too, and on one of the concourse levels, but upstairs in the each team has their own skybox. So you're up there, you got the head coach, the GM, pro personnel, college personnel guy, the owner sometimes, the president of the team, and the position coach, usually, the defensive coordinator or offensive coordinator. And you sit there, and usually the position coach runs the meeting. So I build a tape, good plays, bad plays, make a series of plays from their whole season. I watch all their tape, and I build a little game thing, like 15 plays, and we just talk through it. I ask them what they see, what their thoughts here, and I always throw a zinger or two in there, just to, again, ruffle their feathers, like, hey, what are you doing here, or I'll set something up, like I find a play he does two different ways, and I'll say, well, I thought you said you had this on this play. What is this? And just, catch him off guard real fast and see how fast he can react and respond, and, try to catch him, not being prepped,
That's great information from Jeff Zgonina, longtime player and coach in the NFL. That's Kyle Krabs, Locked On Dolphins. He's in Indianapolis for the Combine. All three of us are on the road right now with your Dolphin Squad Show, Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 podcast network. Yeah, the Cowboys just made a deal. Yeah, a lot of Dolphin fans thinking it's looking pretty similar to what could happen with 2-8. Devon Achane and the Dolphins coming up, as well as more from Indy with the Combine. What is Kyle Krabs looking for out there, and what can the Dolphins come away with? Great insight from Kyle and Z. You're not going to find this anywhere else. It's your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Take a quick break. Come back with a little bit more for you on your Monday. Get a chance to talk to you about our friends at TurboTax. It's tax season, right? But it doesn't have to take over your life. It can be as painless as possible, because this year TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. Who wouldn't want to do that, especially with something like taxes, right? With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress of guesswork. So instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with local TurboTax experts in person or connect online, whatever you prefer. They handle everything, W-2, self-employment. No worries, get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's so easy, right? A huge time saver, gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it for you. And for a limited time, tick, 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 you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for only $150. That's right, all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today for TurboTax on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There you have it. That's Z. That's Kyle. I'm Gries. Kyle's in Indy for the combine, and man, it's really it's almost gone in cycles throughout, and obviously since the combine began, and you had guys just rocket up the draft board because of the combine, and you had some mistakes over the years. Poor Mike Mamula. That's the answer to what I mean. He's the guy out of all the guys, Kyle, and I know you're a Philly guy. Of all the guys who over the years have taken advantage of the combine and shot up the draft boards and then been the biggest bust in the world, the name Mike Mamula always kind of pops into my head every time I hear that.
Yeah, it's the danger of overcorrecting for it, right? And valuing the wrong things and leaning too much into just physical upside. And you got to have a plan for these guys when you draft them. And I think it's very easy to kind of get suckered into or lulled into things that are secondary to the core foundation, which is you're trying to identify good football players. So that's a cautionary tale. There's a bunch of them that exist all throughout the course of time. And at the end of the day, I like to think of the saying that our new general manager has, which is fast can get slow, but big doesn't get small. Right. So it's the workout element of it is all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, it is a big person football game, and you better make sure that you can do and execute that piece of the puzzle at a high level when you're coming in.
Yeah, no doubt, Z. When you think about that, and that's great insight from you, Z, on what you're looking for at the combine and where the Dolphins are lined up this year, those middle rounds, man, that's where you really strike the gold in the draft. It's awesome when you hit on that top prospect, the number one pick, first round pick, whatever. But where you really win in the NFL, at least from a draft standpoint, Z, is what you do down in those mid to late rounds. And man, there's an art to it. How much does the combine factor into all that, Z?
Again, it factors in some, but again, from this point on, the contact you're going to have with the players you're high on is a lot. So you have the combine. Next week, the pro days start. So now some of these coaches and scouts are on the road. There's another interview there. You're meeting and greeting with them there. Then you have the 30 visits. So you bring 30 players in to your facility and meet with them. Then you also have Zoom calls. Like we resume a lot of the guys we talked to at the combine just to check in, talk to them some more, ask them some questions we might have missed, or say, hey, I watched some more tape on you. Let's go over this, So you have a Zoom call with them. I can have it. The head coach can have it. The GM can have it. There's 3 or 4, I think, people that can Zoom call, from a team to one player. So the process just keeps going. So by the time the draft comes, you're going to know these kids inside and out, especially if you're really high on them. And some people throw smoke screens out there. Some guys will bring guys in on 30 just to smoke screen. Some guys will go to their workout day just to put a smoke screen, get a team to trade for you to get that spot. Oh, you're hot on him. We're hot on him. We're going to try to trade and give you what you want so we can take that spot. And you don't have no purpose of taking somebody there.
And Kyle, as you're sitting there in Indy, I can't help it as I'm looking at the Dolphins draft board right now, man. Pick 11. Yeah, you can get a great player at 11, and that's a really important pick. Who knows if they'll trade down, get more picks, which is definitely in play. Round 2, pick 43, another one there. But where I really feel like this draft will be a success or a failure for Miami, Kyle, is that little cluster right there, 75, 87, and 90 in the third round. And then if you want to throw that fourth round pick in there too, right? But those 3 in the third that are so close together, to me, that's where this draft is going to be judged long term.
Yeah, I think the middle rounds are the money rounds, and that's where, if you can bat above average and get more consistent hits there, and the value of having volume there, right, is if every other if you hit 50% of the time on third round picks statistically, and you've got 3, maybe you hit on all 3 and you flip heads 3 times in a row, and that would be amazing. But, if you just play the averages, you statistically are giving yourself a better opportunity. And especially when they're all clustered tightly like that, there's 3 picks within 16 picks in the order. So that's why John Eric Sullivan talks about needing draft picks, and draft picks are your lifeblood, and we need more draft picks, and we want to draft by volume and build our team this way. It's because there is an inherent unpredictability with these guys, and coming in, making the leap from college to the pros, and you're never going to bat 1,000. But if you bat above average and you have more picks than everybody else on a year-over-year basis, that's how you're going to get yourself a nice little roster when it's all said and done.
And I'm wondering, Kyle, too, with those teams that are sitting there behind the Dolphins, right? They might want to move up and take that player that they love. The thought of trading this pick is still on the table, man. What do you think? Forgive me, Kyle, but what would that 11 pick be worth for Miami? What are you thinking? Because obviously it could change if a team really wants a player, but ballpark, what would that pick be worth? And I keep thinking that something in my gut's telling me they're going to trade down.
Yeah, I think they'd certainly like to. And it depends on how far down you're willing to go, right? Like, do you have 8 players at 11 that you feel like are worth the pick? And if they're all gone, you feel like you're into another tier of prospects. And how deep is that second tier, right? Is it 16 guys deep? Is it 22 guys deep? Because that can dictate how far back you're willing to go to feel like you're getting a comparable player with what you would be picking with the pick at 11 if your first tier of players runs out. Now, if you get on the clock and one of those, hypothetically, it's 8 guys, right? Like, that's just an arbitrary number. But if you get on the board at 11 and one of those 8 guys that you absolutely love is on the board, you might just want to stay and pick them, right? And then at that point, you maybe try to trade down with your second round pick and get some extra draft capital that way. But if they're willing to drop down pretty far in the first round order from 11, I don't know if a lot of teams are going to be willing to give up a lot of 27 draft picks for this year's class, but it would at least probably, if you move down in the mid-20s, I would expect you to get a second round pick plus something else on top of that in this year's class. If you were going to move down 2 or 3 spots, you'd probably get a third or fourth, like a late third or a fourth round pick. Because there's a bunch of charts that are out there and they've got different point values that are assigned to all the picks. And the team that's trading up usually has to overpay a little bit versus the team that's trading down, because you have to incentivize a team to move down the board. So it's an inexact science, and there's probably 5 or 6 different charts that all have different pick values. But I would guess if it's a handful of picks, Miami's probably getting a late 3 or an early 4. If they're willing to make a big leap, I could see them getting another top 60 pick.
For the nerds out there, and Z, I want to throw to you on this too, but for the nerds out there like myself, man, if you're wondering what the success rates are for first round picks versus third round picks in the NFL draft, I got that info for you. First round picks in the draft, significantly higher success rate, not a surprise, right? About 50 to 60% success rate, 10 to 20% for third rounders. So you better have some great scouting, and you better be, right on it when it comes to those third round picks if you're going to be dropping down, Z. It's always tough, and you never know. I mean, here's the thing, Z. You never know who's going to turn into a Jeff Zgonina. You never know you have to look at the work ethic. You have to look at the history. But I'm wondering, Z, when you're sitting in that room and you're looking at a potential draft pick, what's the most important thing you're looking for, or the most important things you're looking for, because you're overwhelmed with information in every direction?
Yeah, like personally for me, I would just watch. Like I said, I watch the tape. I like to see what this kid can do, and a few things at the combine or the pro workout I'll watch drill wise, and I just see like bend and hand placement and then effort. Because the effort, is something that's decided by the player more than it is the coach. The coach can try to get you out of it, but does a kid play with a lot of passion? And usually it shows. Like Hutchinson, right, from Michigan. There was a lot of passion in that dude when he played football, and it still is. J.J. Watt, same way.
Yeah.
And go down a list of cats. What do they do? What are the little things they do? And one of the big things I always watch is when someone else on the team makes a play. What's that cat doing? Is he just standing there? If you don't go over and congratulate your buddy, that's a ding for me, you know. And you'll see like cats like turn their back and walk away from dudes when they make plays, you know. And I'm like, that's a selfish player. And like I go back to those videos, I'll have one of those plays on there, and I'll say, "Hey, what's going on here?" You know, your boys made a play. Three of them are celebrating. You're walking to the bench, you know, because you missed a sack or you missed a TFL or whatever it was. That goes a long way. It tells me character of a player without even having a character question in there. So you know, that's how I view it.
When you look at character from that standpoint, does it usually play out that way when you get them in the
Yeah.
building?
Oh yeah.
It
Oh
does,
yeah.
yeah.
And then you have a little background check on them. You know, they have stuff about each player. You know, like from the high school coaches and the college coaches. You know, so the scouts do all that work for you. And I never really ask kids about it, but you have it. You know, and I just show them tape, and I just say, "What's going on here? What's going on there?" You know. And I'd like to see it. If a guy changing plays, the guy might not get a sack, but is he stripping the quarterback? You know, is he getting close to the quarterback? You know, as an outside pass rusher, because it'll come. You know, if they show that trait, of getting that edge or whatever. You know, I have different buckets for different things, and you see it, and it's like, okay, this is what the kid needs. You know, there's potential for him to grow here. You know, and that's what you want to see. You want to see the potential for growth without trying to manufacture it. If it's there, you can give him a couple technique pointers to get over the top.
That's great info from a longtime player and coach in the NFL, Jeff Zgonina. We have Kyle Krabs. He's in Indianapolis, the host of Locked On Dolphins. We're live, by the way, here on YouTube with your Dolphin Squad Show. And then we upload, you download Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, and, of course, Roku as well. Shout out to everybody watching us on the Tegna TV affiliates, of course, across the country and worldwide, from everydayers right on down to the newbies. Really appreciate you being here. Kyle's got FanDuel, and we will keep it going with your squad show right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network.
If you've ever wanted to take on the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the opportunity to do exactly that and turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on a NBA future, and it can be any NBA future, and you can automatically be entered for a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals for 2. That includes flight, tickets, the whole experience. So if you've been looking at the board, thinking about which team to make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in that futures bet. Futures this time of year, whether you're picking who wins the championship, who claims a conference title, it adds an extra layer to excitement to each and every game. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You're muted, Gries.
Muted. Everybody got muted in one shot. It was like the gods came down and said, yeah, we're done with this show. No more Dolphin Squad Show. You're all muted in one shot. But that's Jeff Zgonina, Kyle Krabs, Jim Grieshaber, call me Gries. And Kyle's in Indy for the Combine. And, a big week for the Miami Dolphins, the new regime, John Eric Sullivan, Jeff Hafley. And, it really is interesting in these league events, Kyle. Maybe take everybody through it because it is kind of fun, right? I've covered a lot of drafts. I've been to the Combine twice. And it's another one of those league events where friends get together and it's just that big fraternity. And, you're running into people that you've known for years. And, some guys might be with a different organization, but it just is a big gathering and a big fraternity. And I don't know, I guess it's hard to explain if you haven't been there, Kyle, but it's just, it literally is like a giant extension, almost like of high school or something. It's crazy, but the NFL's version.
Yeah, it's a tight brotherhood, and you see it, with executives and coaches. And I mean, last night I went out to dinner with somebody and we're walking out and it's 2 former Dolphins executives, Rick Spielman and Mike Tannenbaum, are sitting down together, chatting it up, right? It's like, and that's all over the place here. So you get the agents, you get the players, you get current players, you get coaches. And I think, that's one of the neat things about football and the brotherhood of the game. And, it is a special community, and there's all kinds of presentations where they give out awards for who had the best draft class last year, and they do the big data bowl every year for the analytics folks, and they've got the Women in Sports Expo for all of the women with different roles across the league who all get together, and that community element of it with everybody here to take on their own individual objectives, and the whole league descends on it. And if you've never been to a destination like tentpole event where everybody is here, and not like the draft, right? Because the draft, it's, everybody's in their draft rooms in their individual facilities, and the commissioner comes out and gives hugs and chest bumps to guys to hold up generic uniforms for a handful of guys that went to the draft. But these events where the decision makers are here, it really is the experience that, unless you've done it, like, it's very difficult to describe what it's like to just be walking up the street to the coffee shop and walking by a pair of GMs that are chit-chatting, or a GM and a coach for the same team that are talking about what they saw the night before.
Z, what else is going on out there at the Combine besides just the draft stuff, right? I mean, I know the executives are getting together, talking about potential trades, things like that. There's great stakes in Indy. We know that, right? But there's a lot more going on out there league-wise, business-wise, than just the Combine, right, Z? When everybody gets together, there's always potential for crazy stuff to be happening everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, agents are talking about their clients to teams. They're pushing that. All the agents are there. They have their annual meeting and recertification stuff going on as an agent. It is a big time that you get to go back as a coach, or an ex-player. You get to see old people, right? There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot of the NFLPA puts on a lot of stuff with the old players to come and talk to the new guys coming in, and there's all that. And you see all your coach buddies when you're coaching, but it's a little bit different now because it goes so late. These informal and formal meetings, they go to 11 o'clock at night the next couple nights in a row. We used to have morning sessions, but they cut that all out now. So it's like they extended it an extra 2 days. And also for us defensive guys, we used to go last. Now we go first. So when you went last, at least a couple of restaurants were still open after these meetings. You go get a nice steak or anything. So now you have to go before the meeting, have your steak or whatever, and then get over to the formals and informals, because you got to be there to get all these kids in. But like Kyle was saying, you see a lot of people. There's a lot of business going on all levels.
That's a lot of fun, man. You think about the agents, and I can't help but think about Drew Rosenhaus. I almost said my guy, Drew, but I used to work with Drew way back in the day, and I'm talking way before the gray hairs, mid-'90s. There was a TV show called Sunday Night Sports Wrap in Miami. Jim Mandich and Jeff DeForest were the hosts. It was Joe Zagacki. Then it ended up being Defoe. But the point being, there was a segment from a almost unknown, rapidly rising NFL agent, and his name was Drew Rosenhaus. It was called Drew's Views, and I was the producer of his segment. And it's always amazed me to see how far Drew has taken it. Kyle, I know you've known Drew too, and you think about what the Combine means for agents, right? That's money. That's big money. And guys like Drew, you saw what he did against Jim Finks, and we have a couple of things to talk about with regard to Miami Dolphins players right here on today's roster with regard to Drew Rosenhaus. But Kyle, I can't help it as Z mentions it with the agents out there in Indy. I mean, that's money time for these guys. They're like a bunch of sharks out there.
Yeah, it's a chance to kind of put it all on the table as far as interest that teams are showing, and talk and get an idea on what your player pool looks like for teams that are interested in your services. And especially a year like this, there's a handful of really talented free agents. Some of them are already getting the franchise tag. So the ones that are left over, we got 8 teams in the league with $70+ million in cap space. Some of them have to spend, right? Like, and you have a rolling 3-year average of cash spend that you have to have as a team, because the league doesn't want you just not paying any players and pocketing a bunch of money. So you've got a floor to spend. And there's some teams that are coming in this year, and they got to spend $50, $60, $70 million more than they have the last couple of seasons to keep their 3-year rolling average up. So they're going to have to spend money. So you kind of figure out who those teams are. You figure out what your needs are. You figure out what clients you have to represent them. And whether it's Rosenhaus or Athletes First or Wasserman or whatever other big agencies are out there, and even the smaller agencies, right? There's some agents that I know that only have 3 or 4 guys But they've managed to identify and pro scout, and they've landed some good clients despite not having a big client portfolio. But the ones like Athletes First and Rosenhaus that have just dozens and dozens of player, I am in awe, because, you think about the amount of work that goes into the representation of every single one of those clients. Mm-hmm. And, some of those guys you got to give a lot of support to make sure that, that they get what they need taken care of. So Drew in particular has had a pretty heavy influence on the Dolphins roster the past few seasons, when you consider Tyreek Hill and Zach Sealer makes the change, and Ethan Bonner, just the corner, the undrafted corner, just changed to Rosenhaus. Minka Fitzpatrick comes down here and takes on Rosenhaus. So he's got a strong presence or has had a strong presence with the Dolphins roster. And obviously, whether it's Tyreek Hill and obviously him moving on, but Minka's on the roster, Zach's still on the roster and under contract for the next couple seasons. I would expect we'll continue to see a good bit of Drew Rosenhaus.
And Z, just talking about Zach Sealer, I mean, that's the anchor in there, right? With all the uncertainty, with all the trades going on, and Jalen's gone and Bradley Chubb, and Zach Sealer's been the guy in there. He's been the one in that room keeping things together. His play got a lot better as the year went on, but he's definitely that solid force in there regardless. He's 11.2 in cap space this year. I mean, it increases to 20 million in 2027, then 23 and 22 and 28 and 29. So that contract gets bigger and bigger as the years go by, and then you're talking about extensions and things like that. But as of right now, Z, nothing going with Zach Sealer in terms of a restructure or anything like that. But I just wonder if you would talk about real quick for the audience out there, Z, the importance of Zach Sealer on that defensive line, not just being steady in the face of all those rumors and the trades and everything going on there, but with his play in the middle of that defensive line.
Yeah, he's a veteran. It's a young defensive line, and you have to keep someone in there to stabilize, the youth movement. And he's that guy. They invested big money into him last summer. I don't see them moving on for them. I know it's a new regime and everything, but I don't see them, unless somebody comes in and gives them a huge freaking coffer of draft picks. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be there. He's going to be, a good sounding board for those young kids, in this transition, because he's been through it. These kids haven't, coach change and all that. So he can, guide those young cats through it, help them through the OTA, something these young guys haven't been through yet. They were here for, the summer OTAs, but a true full off season. You want a veteran, a good pro like Zach is, to show them how to, navigate that. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to help this defense, be a lot better this year with him than without him.
Yeah, big building block, Kyle. You see him the same way, right? I mean, Zach Sealer, big foundational piece.
Yeah, he obviously his stock's a little down from what it was the previous two seasons, because he didn't have a great first month of the season when they were figuring out, all the young guys and playing and getting the guys in the right role and the right situational stuff. And he talked about kind of the weight that comes with trying to get that chemistry up with those guys. And I think some of the stuff that Zach does really well is nuance stuff that, it works pretty well when it's a guy that you grew up with Christian Wilkins, or it's a guy like Calais Campbell that's been really well tenured around the league. But then you get three rookies that are playing a ton of snaps with you, and those nuance reps, they don't quite hit the same until those guys get more time on task and figure it out. So I think Zach still has a lot of good football ahead of him. Obviously, when you have 2 double-digit sack seasons consecutively, it sets a pretty high bar for what your performance is. But there's a lot of problems and questions and gaping holes on this Dolphins roster long-term. I think Zach Sealer is far from anything that somebody should be concerned about. And I think he's got a chance to have a nice bounce-back season because they kept Austin Clark. Those young guys are still there. There's going to be a lot of familiarity with that individual group, even if maybe the way that they execute some stuff is going to be different with a different scheme.
Kenneth Grant as well. People expecting big things from him, taking a leap forward this year. And Z, we've talked a lot about Chop Robinson, obviously, on this show. And those defensive ends, they're gone now, man. Bradley Chubb's gone, Jalen's gone, and now you're looking at Chop. I wonder, I mean, as a young player still in this league, and as a guy who's, had some, let me just be nice about it and say it's been questionable what we think about Chop moving forward. But what an opportunity for him to step forward now, Z. I mean, if he's ready, if he's willing to take that step forward and put the work in, golden opportunity for him right now in year 3.
Oh, it has to be. I mean, they're relying on him big time because, they're going to draft one or find one in the free agent market for the other side and plus another one because there's nobody really in the D-line room right now. And that's what we need. We need that outside presence. That's, another reason why, Zach's numbers were down. He didn't have that presence next to him inside because there was young players. He's used to having like Calais and all these older guys, another good 3 technique, big body next to him and the outside pass rush. We didn't have that last year. So, of course, your numbers are going to be down because now that you're focusing on stopping him more than anyone else. So once we get, another pass rusher and get Chop going, because Chop's got to get going. We invested, a high pick in him and they've got nothing from him yet. So they want to get him going and hopefully good things for him.
And Kyle, I've seen the name Quay Walker a lot coming out of Green Bay, 5 years in the league, former first-round pick. People love this kid. He's really took a big step forward this past season. Obviously, Hafley knows him really well, and a lot of the people talking out there like Quay Walker may end up in Miami.
I just don't know how much the Dolphins are going to be spending in free agency, right? I mean, there's a pretty decent chance Quay Walker is going to get $7, $8, $10 million per season, and they just don't have that kind of budget, and especially if they end up swinging for Malik Willis to bring him in. If they are invested in that, that's not going. It will be cheap relative to quarterback contracts, but it will not be a small sum of money. And historically, the Packers, where John Eric Sullivan's from, they don't spend on outside players. Now, I think the fact that Quay's got familiarity is a leg up for that conversation, but people point to Rasheed Walker, the tackle. People point to what if the Packers cut Eldon Jenkins and Quay Walker as a expiring contract, and I get the familiarity element, but I have a hard time seeing them spending market price on a lot of starters. I just think that's counterintuitive to what we're talking about a team that's invested in getting younger and cheaper and building through the draft.
Would you rather draft a pass rusher at number 11, Kyle, or take a shot on a guy like Quay? Trade down, maybe take a shot on him, trade down, get more draft picks. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
I would not sign Quay Walker to a free agent contract because I think he's probably a $10 million linebacker would be my guess. I mean,
wow.
You've seen some other guys that have come through last year. It used to be a big deal for guys on the open market to get $10 million. And you saw 3-4 guys that just last year on the open market and free agency got it. So you got to put whatever you think he's worth. Then you got to adjust it for 20% because the salary cap went up. Then you got to adjust it for another 25% because you're bidding against a bunch of other teams for his services. And that's where you get caught up in they don't become cost-friendly transactions anymore. Now, if you could get Quay Walker locked in at like a friendly team rate, great. But, on the open market, you don't get a lot of those for guys that are former first-round picks that are also available and in the prime of their careers. Teams see a younger guy who's been a starter with good physical ability, and they want to pay him to be a starter, and that costs premium. And the Dolphins don't have premium at their disposal right now.
Before I go to Z, real quick, Kyle, do you have a number in your head where that would make sense? You say, hey, I'd take Quay Walker at this number.
It's tough because the Packers since 2020 have given out 6 contracts to players on the open market that played somewhere else with a total or with an average per season salary higher than $2.5 million per season. 6 contracts in 6 years. The Dolphins have done 37 contracts over the same period of time. And I get they tore down their roster in 2019, so they had a bunch of money that they had to spend, and there's that 90% floor that we're talking about, so you got to spend. But, it just feels like you're continuing to set yourself up to keep doing the same thing if you keep doing the same thing and going back to the well. So if Quay Walker's going to sign for less than 5, I think you could say that's very cost friendly. I expect that to not be what he signs for. But for me, it would not be a transaction that I'd be excited about trying to make.
Z, I want to get your thoughts on this because I think a big part of why people are talking about Quay Walker is the guy who came over from Dallas, who you coached the year before, because anytime you're playing on a defensive line and in a defense with Micah Parsons, you're going to look better, and that's going to put more of a spotlight on you.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I was saying earlier. If we get an outside pass rusher, to help with their inside guys, it only helps, So when you get a chance to get an elite player like Micah, so you're talking about, I mean, you got to swing for the fences. That's a game changer. That's a guy that can pretty much every snap change the game. It's hard to find those. Those are rare, very rare. Myles Garrett's another one, Bosa, when he was healthy, was one of them. Those guys that you game plan for every play because you don't. I mean, because the three of those guys, they play hard every play. They don't take plays off like some of these guys do. I mean, it's it amazed me to watch Micah. Really watch him and be with him and see how he just goes and goes and goes and goes. He never stops. He's relentless. And like I said, if you can get a cat like that, man, it changes a whole franchise.
A whole entire franchise, like a Max Crosby too. And when I think about, by the way, I just saw a great podcast before we throw to our last break real quick and come back and wrap it up. And going back and forth, and it was Micah Parsons' podcast, and he's sitting there arguing with Myles Garrett about who's better, but you don't play to run, but you don't do it. And just the two of them talking ish to each other back and forth was one of the best shows I've seen in a while. Speaking of shows, we got to wrap this one up on the other side. Just a quick break, and then we come back and finish up with your Dolphin Squad Show. Kyle's in Indy. We're all on the road today on your Monday with your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, and, of course, your Fins every day. Wrapping it up. I wonder, who would you take right now, Z? Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons? No bias from having coached Micah, but who would you take right now?
I'll take both.
Both? Yeah, one on each side. You're good.
Yep.
Yeah. That'd be like, who would you compare that to? What's the best pair of defensive ends? I mean, that would definitely be the best of all time, Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. But just that disruptive force on the outside, getting to the quarterback, and man, it seems like forever since the Dolphins have had Jason Taylor, one of the best to ever do it, and what a difference he made in games. One of the positions on a field that can turn the outcome of any game, anytime. As we wrap it up here with your Dolphin Squad Show. And guys, real quick, I wanted to get to this. I don't think it's a huge topic for us, but Javonte Williams, and I'm not sure why there, and Kyle, you can speak to this better than I can, but so many people comparing Javonte Williams to Achane. When you look at the 3-year body of work, there's almost no comparison. When you look at last year, they were similar, but look, $24 million from the Cowboys to Javonte Williams, $6 million in a signing bonus. I believe $16 million guaranteed. If I'm Achane and Achane's team, I'm laughing at those numbers, wondering why anybody's comparing him to me. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, I think kind of the hierarchy is there's 9 running backs in the NFL currently that are getting paid more than $10 million. And I think Devon would be the 10th if he's the next one to sign. He's probably, James Cook, similar production from a explosive play standpoint. I think Achane's more explosive. I think he's a little better in the passing game than James Cook is, but Achane's also played more snaps, right? Where it was a big deal that the Bills finally let James Cook play a higher snap share. He was like a 55% snap share player his first couple seasons in the league. So Cook held out through the start of camp, or held in, I should say, and he got himself $11.5 million per. I think you're looking at Josh Jacobs at 12, Alvin Kamara 12.25, Jonathan Taylor ranks 4th at 14. I think that's probably a safe bet for where Devon would end up if he were to get a contract extension done now. But where that can shift and turn is, does Bijan Robinson get a deal done before Devon Achane does? Does Jahmyr Gibbs get a contract done before Devon Achane does? Because if those two guys sign, I think that kind of sets up Achane's camp to argue for a new set of contracts with this year's salary cap, right? And it's, well, if they get 20 or if they get 21 and they're the highest paid, that entire Achane camp can set their arguments off of that pay scale at that cap and build their arguments to say we should be in front of Derrick Henry at 15 because of what those other guys got paid that are also on their rookie contracts and how productive they've been. So if the Dolphins are serious about getting Achane done this offseason, and I don't think they need to be, and I would probably have an offer that is 12, with probably 2 years guaranteed on that for 24. And if they want to play hardball with it, I'd probably be content because of the position and the coaching change and the regime change to let it play itself out. And I know I have the franchise tag in my back pocket if I need it, because, there's not a lot of growth at the top of that market, and there hasn't been for a long time. Now, I think Bijan and Gibbs will have something to say about landing in the top 3 when it's all said and done and we start playing games again in the fall. But they've got some player control tools at their disposal to make sure that this doesn't go nuclear on them if they can't get a contract done. But if they're serious about getting it done, push play on it now, because the price will go up once those other guys sign.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kyle. Once those other guys sign, you're looking at Cook, you're looking at Henry, Jonathan Taylor obviously had a huge year, Bijan Robinson, maybe the most similar to Achane, Z. But when you're looking at those guys on that list, Devon Achane was the top graded rusher in the NFL in 2025. And that says a lot when you're looking at that list and you're looking at the money. So I don't think there's any doubt as to what Achane's value is within the scope of the position, Z. So then it comes down to how much you value the position, right? Because we talked about a couple of years ago, running back was completely devalued and Barkley had a huge year, and then CMC comes back and all of a sudden the running back's, where the running back has always been. So how do you see all that, Z, with Achane and the money? Because it could get nutty when you look at everything that he does for this team.
Got to find somebody to get nutty with. That's what it comes down to. It's up to the owner, the GM, if they want to stroke that check or not. And that's what it is, or someone's going to come and swoop them away, because what are you going to do? You can get franchised. They don't have to pay these players. That's the thing. That's what people got to understand. I get it. The market goes up, but what is that owner willing to pay that player? What does he think is viable? You know what I'm saying? Is he think a quarterback's more, or a rush end, or a left tackle, or a wide receiver over a running back? Doesn't fit in the scheme of things. You can't just go out and just pay somebody just to pay somebody because everyone else in that position is getting paid. That's not business sense. It comes down to what that owner wants to do at the end of the day.
I got to be honest with you guys, and I wonder where you guys land on this before we wrap it up. But I don't think there's a running back in the league, Kyle, that I would take over Achane right now. Dead serious. I don't think there's one. I think I'd take him number 1.
I would take the 2 guys that were in the same draft class that we just got talked about getting paid. With Gibbs and Bijan, I would definitely take those 2 out in front. But the guys at the top of the salary right now, with Derrick Henry and a down year for Derrick Henry, but still it was not what it was in 24. And Saquon Barkley, the Eagles ran him into the ground in 24, and he looked like it this past year. He thrived on explosive runs. He didn't really have explosive. I think he had one explosive run like in November, and it was like, aha, there it is. We haven't seen it all year. And he was averaging like 3.9 yards a carry. But Achane, as far as explosive backs and weapons in the league, I think he's top 3. But I think what Bijan Robinson can do as an all-around player, and that includes like in pass pro and stuff like that. And that's something for Devon that's just, if he's on the field on passing downs, you're very much better served, in my opinion, having him run routes and be eligible to catch the ball as compared to in protection, just because he doesn't kind of have that mass about him, and it's not a strength of his game, and that's okay, right? Because he can impact the passing game in other ways. But and I think Gibbs right now, for me, probably pound for pound, I would say I think he's the best back in football right now.
What about you, Z? Who would you take over Achane, if anybody?
But Bijan Robinson. Yeah. That dude, he's a stud. I mean, like Kyle was saying, he can block, he can do it all. I mean, he's a special player. He's a true game changer, and he's a thick-bodied guy. And I just like the way he plays and how he carries himself out there. I think he right now I'd take him.
And I'm looking at this, guys, just, these thoughts keep popping in my head. How many positions do the Dolphins have a top 3 to 5 guy in the league? Wherever you put Achane on the list, he's definitely in the top 5, right? How many other positions do the Dolphins have a top 5 guy in the league? You don't really have that anywhere else. You have it at running back. I mean, and that's about it, right?
Center.
Yeah, center.
Center,
Yeah.
and obviously Jordan Brooks was first team All-Pro. So I think those two, and maybe Minka Fitzpatrick, but he's probably not going to be here this year, right? So I think that's the short list for Miami for the blue chip players on their roster, and they've got interesting decisions to make with all those guys because all 4 of those guys are going into contract years in 2026.
Wow. That's the bow on the show right there. Perfect, Kyle. Real quick before we let you out of here, what else do you have coming up on the channel from Indy? And are you looking, anybody out there you're looking at, like coming flying under the radar? What are you looking for out there in Indy, Kyle?
I'm going to let these guys come to me, and I'm going to let the news come to me. So I will probably be recording somewhere in the convention center throughout the rest of the week, setting up, finding a little corner somewhere, and I'll have my little microphone stand here, and I'll have my tripod with my webcam on it, and when news hits, we'll react. And that's the whole week in Indy. And it's part of the fun is you don't know when duty's going to call, and it's going to be time to tap in and do a show.
Well, thank you so much for all the great work you're doing out there, man, including on this show here today. Z, final thoughts from you before we wrap it up?
No, again, I guess I keep saying the excitement's starting, and I can't wait to go through this roller coaster, the ups and downs, and we'll see how this pans out and how we build this team this spring.
Yeah, we're just getting started with the offseason. All kinds of great things happening. And do we know about Wednesday yet, guys? Do we know what time we're doing?
It'll be in the evening again.
We'll be in the evening on Wednesday. Of course, Kyle's in Indy. We're all out on the road. We're having a great time, but we never want to miss the opportunity to bring you this show. It's so much fun to talk to you here on your Dolphin Squad Show. I'm Gries. That's Z. That's Kyle. Thank you so much for being here. As always, man, keep it right here on the channel. Telling you right now, between YouTube and then wherever you download, Apple, Spotify, anywhere, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, and of course Roku, Kyle will have the best content in the league, best Dolphins content you could imagine coming your way all week from the Combine. We have one more squad show, and keep it here for that. We'll be here on Wednesday evening. Until then, keep your game tight in your mind right. Thank you so much for being here on your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you to the everydayers, right on down to the newbies popping in here for the first time. We'll see you next time on your Dolphin Squad Show.